Oh, I love that, man. I love it.
That was an excellent clap.
Oh, I got gloves on. You know what I'm saying? It's cold down here in my basement. So,
I saw it coming. That's what made it extra funny.
yeah, it came by pretty good, but I'm gonna hit it up, man. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talk Junkies, where tonight's going to be a very interesting night. A lot of things going on right now. We've been kind of quiet the beginning of this year. We've allowed the Kansas City Chiefs to come in and affect our lives, man, and it's kind of hampered the podcast a little bit. Johnny and Jesse aren't here tonight, but I literally texted Dan, who's been a frequent flyer of Talk Junkies and been on the show quite a few times. I literally texted him just a little bit ago. I was like, hey, man, let's do a podcast. And he instantly said, let's do it. And then here we are, man. Dan, what's going on? How's life? It's been a while.
It has been a while, but I've been keeping track of you guys. Y'all been really hitting it out of the park with these podcasts. I've been very impressed.
Appreciate that, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I've got stuff to keep me busy. You know, this COVID stuff is making it a little hard to make money, but I've been keeping myself busy.
That's good. That's good. You got to keep on keeping on, man. Nothing can stop you. COVID's not going to stop the train of what is called America, man. There's 320 or 330 million of us, and we're all striving for the same thing, and that's just to live in freedom, man. And I think a lot of people don't really know what that means. And if you guys have ever listened to a podcast that we've had with Dan on, and for any new viewers that are on like iTunes and Spotify like that, if you go onto our YouTube channel, we have plethora of videos, and you just go to the guest podcast list and just look at the ones that say Dan from the Dan Constitution of Us. And we've talked about this quite a bit, man, but it's just getting crazy out there. And we talked briefly before the podcast started, and just to put it into perspective for people that how important the Constitution is, and it's just something that we can't forget about, right? And Joe Biden already in the first month or so, or I guess it's been a month, almost a month. What's today? It hadn't been quite a month yet. But he's already signed over 40 executive orders. And I know in last week's podcast, like Jesse and Johnny said, it's not a dictatorship and blah, blah, blah. But Dan, can you just enlighten us on what that even means? Like, how do you within 3 weeks sign 40 executive orders as president? And is that even allowed?
That's not what he's doing is not allowed, because none of these executive orders are attached to any legislation. That's the thing is that everything that the executive does, the executive power is linked to the legislative power. So everything that the executive does has to be attached to a law, has to be attached to some legal congressional action or legal congressional act. And if it's not, then it's not covered under the Constitution. The executive works hand in glove with the legislative branch. It's not its own separate thing that just goes out and does whatever it wants.
So was there a point in time where did the executive order come from, and why? Are you aware of that? Because I've never really looked into it on how it was even established that a president would have that type of power.
You know what? I have never looked into where those where executive orders come from, but I would not doubt that it was something that happened from the earliest time. I wouldn't doubt that George Washington had executive orders, but at the same time, I would venture to guess that he probably had some legislative action that it was tied to.
Right.
He had the authority given to him by law to do something. The president just doesn't get to say, okay, I don't care what the law says. You're not deporting anybody for 2 weeks, or you're not deporting anybody anymore. Well, the law says, that these people need to be deported, right? That's one of the things that he came in and decided was going to be brought to a stop. Well, Congress has the power does not have the power to just allow people to come in. Congress has been empowered to have rules for naturalization, right? So if someone comes in, they have to be naturalized. They don't just get to just plop down and do whatever they want. We're not an open borders country. That's not what the Constitution is set up to allow. So when he's saying that, Customs and Border Patrol are not allowed to arrest people and deport them, then he's going against not just what our laws already say, but he's going against the Constitution as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it definitely does. But I think we just we need to break it down to the importance of what people are, and it goes on the left and the right. I truly do think it does. And again, we've had many discussions about this, but the importance of what's truly happening. And again, like I said, we talked earlier, and I think that we're slowly losing the Constitution of the United States. A lot of people, I got a good buddy of mine, man, one of my best friends. He's one of my best friends. And every time that we have this argument, he literally says to me, Paul, it's an outdated, wasted document. He's like, it's just a piece of paper that they wrote a couple hundred years ago. Like, we need change. We need to do it. We need to do something different. And then I sit there and I try to explain to him, like, how it's the foundation of it grants us the freedoms that we love and enjoy today. And he just doesn't get it, man. I don't think a lot of people get it. And I don't think a lot of people have looked into it. And a lot of people don't know what the Constitution is, including myself, right? And meeting you, I actually started reading a little bit of the Constitution. I haven't finished it yet, and I still need to because it's the most important document of my life. And throughout this whole process and this whole year, one thing that I've learned, Dan, and again, thank you for teaching me this, is that freedom is never given to you. Like, it's something that, and I'm not inciting violence in any way, shape, or form, but what this country is based upon and how it was built is that you earn your freedom. And no one in my lifetime has, minus people who went to wars, and in my opinion, those wars were based on fallacies, you know what I'm saying? And it was like a false pretense to say that, hey, we fought for your freedom, like anyone my age that went to the military and went to Iraq. And I'm not discrediting them, like, thank you for your service, but in my opinion, it was for the wrong reasons. But no one knows what it's like to try and fight for freedom. You know what I'm saying? And that includes me. And I don't ever want it to come to a time where I have to fight for my freedom, where it involves violence. I would like to still have a platform where I have a voice to get out to people and they can make the decision for themselves, but that's slowly going away. But man, if we lose the Constitution, what happens, Dan?
Well, we become like every other country on the planet. We're the only free country in the world. And people really don't get that. They look at places like Canada and Australia and England, the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it. And they say, well, they have freedoms. It's like, no, they don't. Everything that they have there is a legislated privilege. Everything that they have there is something that is a privilege that has been granted to them by the government. And where we are different is that our Constitution is a contract between me and you, an agreement about what the government can and can't do. We are the parties to that contract. The government is not even the states. The states are not parties to the contract. They're governed by it as well. And what the Constitution says is, and it plainly says this in the amendments, in the Ninth Amendment, that powers not granted to the government, powers not granted to the federal government are reserved, and not all of our rights are listed. The only rights that are listed are ones that seem to be in danger from the get-go, right? And those rights are not listed to grant them to me and you. Those rights are listed in order to place duties, responsibilities, obligations, and prohibitions on the government. right? And that's the part that I think a lot of people don't get, is that they think that here's the Constitution and the government's supposed to obey it. And that's not, even when the Constitution was written, that was not the understanding. Those guys who wrote the Constitution were fully willing to abide by it, right? Some of them had some different ideas and, wanted to do things differently. They didn't agree with the whole thing. But by and large, they were looking at it as this is the agreement that we're going to abide by. The problem that we run into is today we have a whole lot of people who don't have an understanding of what the Constitution really is, haven't read it, and have their own ideas about what we ought to do. Like, you and I can disagree about what the government should and shouldn't do, right?
Right.
We can have a deep disagreement about it. But the way to solve that is not by electing somebody. The way to solve that is we read the Constitution and we look, is what you want to do allowed by the Constitution? If it's not, then electing somebody is not the way to go. What you need to do is you need to get enough people to agree with you outside of electing somebody to pass an amendment. We change the Constitution. That's how we do it. Because those rules are in place so that when we all look at it, you and I can agree the government is doing something that it's not allowed to do. And we can shut it down.
So, for instance, like, let's break it down to people. Whenever they passed that second coronavirus package, I believe it was like right around $2 trillion or something like that. Because the first one, I can't remember, man. They're spending so much money right now. It's crazy. But the second document that came out before, and it was the second stimulus that everyone received, it was over 5,000 pages. 5,000 pages of information and law and different types of scenarios or different types of legislation that all happened. And members of Congress that were in the House only had 2 hours to read it before they were going to vote on it. Or maybe it had been 3 or 4 hours. I can't remember, but it was a short amount of time. And when you have things in there that affect legislation and law that happens for everyday Americans, and our own congressmen and women only have 2 to 3 hours to read it before they vote on it, like that's where we're at right now. Like, that's, to me, that's a laugh in the face to what is the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Because those legislators are not even the ones writing these laws. So most of them have no clue what's in it at all, right? They have no clue, sort of where to look for particular things that they may be interested in, because they haven't written it. They had no part in writing it. These things come to them, from all of these bureaucrats who are just there to write these laws for them. That's how we end up with 5,000 pages. This is the whole Constitution right here. That ain't 5,000 pages.
Nope.
And this whole thing is not even the Constitution. This has the Declaration of Independence in it, right? To read and understand that, you could do that maybe in a day, but you're not going to be able to do it in a few hours, because it's a lot of information to take in. And it's the same thing with this legislation. The purpose of that is to keep pushing all this stuff through. And like Nancy Pelosi said, we got to pass it to know what's in it. Like, what kind of crazy nonsense is that? We got to pass it to know what's in it. No, you don't. You don't have the authority to pass 90% of the stuff that you're saying. There's no authorization in the Constitution to send money to another country. None. For any reason. So, when they start doing that, especially when it's billions of dollars they're sending, that's our money.
So what would you say?
Contract doesn't allow that to happen.
What would you say to my friend who said that, like, times change and we need something new, like we need something new, these things don't apply anymore? Mine is like let's just throw out the first like 5 amendments, but you know what I'm saying, because there are inherent, and never mind, forget what I just said, because he doesn't even believe in the Second Amendment. He thinks that they should be able to put regulations on guns. So I never mind on that. But what would you say to him? Like, hey, I'm my friend and I'm speaking to you right now, Dan. Mm-hmm. It's old. We just need it. We need new stuff. we need new laws, we need new this, we need new that. Like, man, screw the Constitution. What do you say to him?
Okay, what specifically within the Constitution, what do you think is outdated and needs to be changed or thrown out? What specific things?
So whenever I asked him that question, he specifically said gun legislation, and he's like, "Well, what's wrong with putting more? What's wrong with putting more restrictions on guns?" And I was like, well, it's my Second Amendment right. Like, I don't there. It's for me to protect myself and my family, and also not only I don't even think it says that, but it's for us to protect ourselves against a tyrant government. And you know, he had gone on to say, he's like, Paul, he's like, we're both servers, man. And he's like, we both have to go and we have to get food handlers cards to be able to serve food to the public. He's like, how's that any different than you have to register your gun or you happen to have a license to buy ammunition? I was like, as I just told him, I was like, man, I was like, you can think whatever you want. I was like, I don't need someone telling me that I need a license to buy ammunition. And he just, and he makes a good point, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, not really, because I mean, I don't know. That's just one of the things that he had described.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that you and I have an agreement, right? We've written a contract between the two of us. Okay, and this is our agreement. What authority does your friend have to come in and change that agreement?
Well,
does he have any authority to change the agreement?
No. I mean,
that's between us, right?
Right.
That's an agreement between us, right? So the agreement that we're talking about and the change with this stuff as far as the legislation is concerned is an agreement between us. The Second Amendment is our agreement about weapons, right? We've agreed that the Second Amendment, your right to have guns and ammunition and all that stuff, is not subject to interference by the government. That's our agreement. And if you're an American, right, you've agreed to that. Now, the government is not part of that agreement. The government would be the person coming in from the outside and saying, we're changing that. You and I say, no, we're not changing that, right? Because you're not part of this agreement, right? You're over there. Our agreement says that you are going to do these things because you were created by this agreement. The government was created by the agreement, by this contract that you and I have. Without this contract, the government doesn't exist. So when the government comes in and tries to change our agreement, they don't have the authority to do that. They're not part of the agreement. Now, all the arguments that your friend has are valid, okay? But how he wants to change that is not valid.
Correct. And you said it earlier, like you got to get a group of people together and you got to change it through making a new amendment.
Right.
And again, man, like I always forget this, and I've had you on so many times, and I wish I just would have said that to him. It's like, hey, man, like the government doesn't get to decide. Like they're not a part of it, man. Like they're not a part of the contract. And I think that that's what people forget, man. And the people who fought for our freedoms made it that way. They made it that way to where that the government wouldn't have a part, because that's what we left. That's why we fled and we came to America. You know what I'm saying? To just get away from oppression and taxation. And it's slowly happening again. Maybe not slowly, because at a rapid rate we're being taxed out of our asses, man. But that's the thing. They're not the players. They're not a part of the game. And people think that they are. And maybe they don't think it, but they're just born that way. And I was born that way too, and I didn't know any different until I talked to you and had you on the podcast, man.
That's what we've been educated to believe. That's the propaganda that we've been fed for years, is that the government has some say about this. The Supreme Court gets to interpret the Constitution. And it's like, no, that's not the way that whole thing works. The Supreme Court was created by the Constitution. The Constitution is the authority above the Supreme Court and dictates how it can and can't behave. And the Constitution, the contract between us, is there so that when the Supreme Court starts doing stuff outside of that, we can say no. And the problem ends up being that the Constitution itself is so revolutionary. I mean, the Constitution it's a 250-year-old document that we are only now coming to the point where we have enough of an evolved society and intellect to really be able to grasp it and use it, really be able to grasp it and implement it. Because the education that's necessary, you don't have to be a genius to understand the Constitution, but you have to have a certain understanding of freedom and politics and history and authoritarian government to really grasp what it is that is the intention of the Constitution, because it's a very thorough, very complex document that was written in a very uncomplicated way so that people like you and me would be able to understand it, implement it, and enforce it. We are the only law enforcement in the United States. The Constitution was written in a manner that there isn't any real law enforcement powers given to the government outside of insurrection, revolution, and invasion. Right? I mean, it's just not there. They don't get to tell us, they don't get to say that we don't get to have a particular conversation. They don't get to say that we don't get to exchange particular guns, that I don't get to buy certain things from you, whatever it is that you're selling that I may want to buy. You know, that's not a power that they have, whether it's food, whether it's drugs, whether it's medicine, whether it's a service. You know, talking about your friend, you know, you guys are servers and they've forced you guys to get licenses. They don't have the authority to do that.
Well, that was the state. That was the state. It's not federal. You know what I'm saying? But
it's still the same thing, though. See, that's the thing that's powerful about this, is that the Constitution is a document that creates the Union, the United States. And under the United States, we have a uniform kind of action, or uniform kind of society, right? That the Constitution sort of brings in, and it governs all the governments, state, local, and federal. So the Second Amendment applies as much to the state and local governments as it does to the federal government, right? The local and state governments do not have any authority to limit those weapons. That's you know, because part of the thing is, and this never gets discussed, the very first part of the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the maintenance of a free. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's the militia. The militia is something that is not just, you know, it's not just some kind of fantasy idea. It's in Article 1. It's a requirement. The government is required to finance, train, and basically keep the militia there. And that's not being done.
No, people don't know about it, man. That's crazy. Like that, man. That's mind blowing. And people don't know about this. And people, if you're from the United States, man, and you're hearing this, it's just like we all need to just read, man. Just read. That's all we have to do is read. And if everyone reads, then we're all on the same page. And what better page to not be on than the Constitution? I mean, without the Constitution, we wouldn't be here. You know, and we might still be here, but it would be under different circumstances. And you probably wouldn't like them. Right. If we continue to go down the road that we're going, you're not going to like the circumstances that are held for us in the future. And that, again, that's just my opinion. And I know that it's slowly happening, man. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, how it's pleasure versus pain, how Johnny described it with David Icke, was just beautiful, man. It was just like the, like they're going to keep doing it, and they'll always be able to thread that needle so well to where you don't even notice it's happening until there's a point in time where we're literally living in 1984 George Orwell. You know what I'm saying? Right. And as easy as it sounds, is you literally just go get a free Constitution book or booklet and read it and understand it, and everyone does that. And then we understand what it is to be a true American.
Mm-hmm.
And then we understand the real, true laws and regulations that are, I don't know how you would say it, embedded in us, I guess you could say, and the things that aren't being followed that are happening currently in the state of America. How important is the Constitution, Dan? How important is it?
The Constitution is America. Without the Constitution, America doesn't exist. There's, and I tell people this all the time. If you have somebody that wants to undermine, circumvent, or destroy the Constitution, then they're not an American. America is the Constitution. So it's our responsibility to know what that is, because that's it should be our first line of defense against an authoritarian government, right? And like we were talking about earlier, this is how powerful the Constitution is. It's been under attack for 250 years, and it's still preventing authoritarian government from completely taking over our country, even with all the stuff, all the attacks and all the things that have been put in place. Even with the fact that we have, this Federal Reserve that has come in and undermined our money and our financial system. Even though we have this illegal IRS that comes in and directly takes money from people, contrary to what the Constitution says. And we've got, welfare and Social Security and all these other things that are meant to undermine the freedom that the Constitution is meant to preserve and make all of us reliant on the government. And they have been consistently working to make that happen, consistently working to change our minds so that we look not to the Constitution that gives us the freedom, right, and places responsibilities on us, right? We have responsibilities under the Constitution that we have to uphold in order to have that freedom. You can either leave everything in the hands of the government and not be free, or you can take responsibility for those things and be free. And with a limited government, that's the only way that you can have that freedom, because otherwise the choices are going to be made for you beforehand.
So we're in interesting times, and I just have a follow-up question to that. And the cards are stacked against us. You know what I'm saying? To the point where at the beginning of the podcast, you had described that or I think it was actually before the podcast when we were actually having a conversation, that we're the only country that enjoys the benefits. We are of what it is to be America. And, I've met people from other countries, and I've met people who have went to other countries that are American, and they're like, there's no place like America. There's no place like it. Like, so we are a target on the globe, per se. And it's a big target. It's a pretty big target. So my question is, how long could we sustain something like this before you have all these other countries trying to implement something like the Great Reset, which with COVID and everything that's happened right now, it's came into the limelight that the Great Reset is something that's very powerful movement that's happening. How do we avoid something like that if we're the only country? And you have everyone looking in from other countries saying, man, America, stand up and fight and, be that last standing free country. Is it even possible when it's 1 against 1 million?
Well, yes, it is very possible. It is very doable. We have our official military, and then we have our unofficial, unorganized, armed population. And you could not assemble a large enough army from all the countries on the face of the planet to go against America. and take us down militarily. You just can't. Because, the Chinese can't trust their soldiers. The Russians can't trust their soldiers. Then none of these other countries have a military like ours. Like I was reading this article about China and the military that they have. They have these very high tech helmets that they've given their soldiers, right? Have all these things that read their body temperature and can cameras and everything like that. And it also has embedded in it a kill switch, so that if the soldier starts to do something that their higher ups don't like, they push a button and it shoots them in the head, kills them.
Jesus.
Now, that's not something that we would do in the United States, right?
Definitely not.
And the people who are in the military volunteered to go in there. They weren't just taken off the street and forced into the military. So they have an idea as well. There's a good chance, and this is part of what's going on with this purge that's happened in the military right now, where they're going through and trying to get everybody out who has Trump-leaning views. They're trying to get rid of all of those people who might not follow the orders when they come down to come after us, to come after real Americans. But to get back to exactly what you're talking about as far as us being a target, we definitely are, but we're a target of the governments of other countries and the people who are aligned with those governments and who support those governments. We are a beacon of hope even still today, with all the stuff that's happened with us, to people like the ones in Hong Kong. They're revolting against China because of America. And that's why all these authoritarian nations need to shut us down. Because every country on the face of the planet, every government on the face of the planet is our enemy. Every one of them. There is not a single one of them that is our ally. They are only friendly to us because of what they can get from us. Even with all the things that have happened, America is we're 350 million people, and there's 7 billion on the planet. So what does that make us? About 5% of the world's population, roughly?
Right. Give or take, man. I'm bad at math.
Responsible. We're America, even with all the stuff that China has done and all this stuff, we're still responsible for 30% of the world economy. 30%. 5% of the population, we're responsible for 30% of the world economy. We still feed most of the world. We feed more people than live here in the United States. There are more people who rely on us for food than just the people who live here, right? And China's importing rice from America. So these other countries, these other authoritarian countries, these governments want to shut us down because of the message that we send to their people. Whether we're broadcasting it or not, just our existence is enough to make their people say there's a better way to do this than the way that you guys are trying to make us do it. And there are still enough people here in the United States that have the idea of what freedom truly is, that not only can we survive all this, but we will.
Yeah.
It's just the thing is just going to be if enough people are aware of how we got here and understand that the Constitution is the thing to use because it has the solution to every problem that we face. If we fully and literally implemented the Constitution tomorrow, we wouldn't have any of the problems that we've got.
We wouldn't.
None of them.
That's the craziest part. And it wouldn't involve any violence at all.
No.
It just requires people not to participate in certain types of things that are happening right now. It's that easy, truly. And they make it so they make it so easy for you to just literally, like I said, just pick up a book and read and understand it. And then, like you said, tomorrow would be completely different. That's crazy. And the time is ticking, man. The time truly is ticking for where there's going to be a fork in the road. And if we don't take the right turn, there's very large implications that could happen. And could you only imagine a world, and I'm not trying to be dismal right now, but could you only imagine a world if we took the wrong turn and we don't implement the foundation of the Constitution of the United States and America falls, what that would look like? What type of world would we live in where you have the top 1%? And I know it's pretty bad here in America right now with the top 1% and how much money they have against the poor and the middle class. But imagine if America didn't exist, how much worse that would be. How much worse that would be. I mean, like I said, man, I don't think we could fathom what type of world that would look like if the Constitution didn't exist.
1,000 years of darkness and slavery.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. Because it took the Constitution of the United States is the pinnacle of Western civilization. It is every great idea of Western civilization condensed into a single document. It is the single greatest political document ever written in the history of mankind. Period. And when people really, if you read it through, right, you just read it through just to get the words. It's pretty powerful. But when you read it through as a blueprint or as an instruction manual, it takes on a completely different, it takes on a completely different attitude. I mean, when you look at it as the instruction manual for this is how we're setting up our legislative branch, and this is what it can and can't do. And this is our executive branch, and this is what it can and can't do, and this is how it works with the legislative branch. Okay, it's pretty cool. Then we have the judicial branch, right? And this is what it can and can't do, and this is how it works with the executive, and this is how it works with the legislative. And you look at all those things, and you start to pay attention to the restrictions that are placed on them, right? Like in Article 3, where it talks about the judicial branch, it states in there that the trial of all crimes shall be by jury. Now that's nationwide. That's for everybody. The trial of all crimes shall be by jury. Okay? The government does not have any prosecutorial oversight. They don't get to come in and say that's not a crime. If you think a crime has been committed, then a jury is required. The government can only hear that through a jury. A prosecutor doesn't get to hear it. The cops don't get to hear it. You say it, okay. A jury gets to decide that. And they decide it based on law and fact, which means that when you present it to a jury, it doesn't matter whether that has been legislated as a crime. The jury gets to sit there and go, you know what, Paul, what happened to you is definitely a crime. And here are the people who have committed this crime against you. And we find them guilty of these offenses, and here's the punishment, right? And the punishment is not something that's governed by legislation, nor is the crime, because those are all, in the First Amendment, those are all covered under an abridgment of the right to petition the government for redress. When you file a suit, when you make a criminal complaint, you're approaching the government for redress. You're saying, here's something that's happened to me. This is my grievance. This is what has happened and how I've been wronged. And I can't take care of it on my own. I could, but if I take care of it on my own, then we're going to have a whole different deal. So I'm coming to you, government, because, you know, we've set you up sort of in a position where we've got these courts that you're supposed to be maintaining so that I can bring this in and have it heard, and it can be taken care of in a civil manner. Right? And you know, these are the things that I understand that when I talk about this stuff, it's way beyond what most people gather from the Constitution. But when you sit down and read it, I believe that 99% of the people who sat down and read the Constitution as a blueprint and as an instruction manual would come to the same conclusion that I have, or something very similar to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100% it does. And I think like, so there's one other thing is like for my buddy, it's just like, you don't toss away something that's the greatest document of all time. And so what you do is, of course, like there's new technology, like we're progressing as humans. The amount of technology that has happened within the past 40 years alone is astronomical, right? To the point where you're on the lowest sea level point on Earth, and then you go in the next 40 years, you're on Mount Everest. Like that's the exponential growth of technology. So of course, like there are going to be things that need to be probably added to the Constitution, which you do, through the Constitution. You add amendments. Like you get people together, and not only do you, like here's the thing, and this is the hardest part, is it has to be unbiased. It has to be common sense. And that's, to me, when you talk about the Constitution, it means to me common sense. Like you said, there was 1,000 years there was many thousands of years of dark times on the earth. But then there came light, and then there was the Constitution, and then, to me, a lot of it's just common sense. Just common sense. Like you said, you can read it, understand it. It's common sense. Like if you didn't know what violence was, or you didn't know what corruption or greed was, and you lived a life and you understood what common sense was, that's the Constitution. And in today's age, you don't need to discard the Constitution. You need to add to it, but with common sense, which would be extremely hard to do in today's age with everything going on right now. But that would be my answer to my best friend, is like use common sense to add to this document, not just throw it to the wayside.
Right. And my thing too is I'm all in favor of saying, if you want to say that the Constitution is outdated and outmoded and all that stuff, fine. How about we do this? Because it's a plan that you and I can agree on, we can all say the Constitution is right here. We have it all in black and white. It's something we can all read, and generally agree on, right? How about we do this? How about we fully implement it, figure out what the problems are, right?
Boom.
Because we've never done that, right? Fully implement it,
boom,
see where the problems are, and make corrections then.
There you go.
Rather than doing it just sort of out of willy-nilly, kind of out of thin air.
There you go, man. That's a way better way to put it, man. Fully implement it for what it truly is, because it's never happened, and then find out what the problems are. And I understand that the population is large, and Johnny, if he were here, he would argue that, man, 330 million, 350 million people, that's too many people to govern under one type of document or one type, but it's not.
Especially not the Constitution, because it's not meant to govern me and you. That's just it. It's basically meant to leave me and you alone. And as long as you're not doing anything to harm me and I'm not doing anything to harm you, right, everything's good. But the biggest part, one of the greatest pieces of the Constitution that we have to implement, that solves 90% of the problems that we have across the board as far as society and government and crime and all that stuff, is the militia. The militia is everywhere. The militia is everyone. Okay, now we've talked about this before.
We have, yeah.
Imagine with the militia, me, you, Johnny, and Jesse are all living in the same neighborhood, right? We're all aware, because of the way that the militia has to function. We're all aware of each one's circumstances. Doesn't mean we're in each other's business up to our ears. It doesn't mean it's all gossip. But I got to know, okay, you got two young kids. So if anything happens, you're going to have an impediment to being able to do certain things, because you have those two kids. Those have got to be in any plan. That's got to be part of any plan.
Yep.
Right? Because I need you to do certain things. So we got to figure out how we're going to make sure that we've got that taken care of. And the same thing with everybody else. So we're all aware of that. So if there's a problem that happens, where do we need to go? Right? We're all aware of what, each one of us has. say, Johnny's great with working on cars. We start working on the cars right there in the neighborhood. We start growing our own food, and these are just things that I'm just making up.
Yeah. And it would be tough to do those types of things in like the cities, but there would be other things that you could do in the city to do those type of things, which still networking and communicating. And one thing I've learned, especially in 2020, was like that's one thing that they were trying to attack at the fullest force was the human connection. And not only that, but towards the end, like you could tell where they were going with it, and that's to demonize what it is to have a militia. And that's another thing that they're trying to attack. And that's one, and I don't think a lot of people knew, and there was militias in the 90s and 2000s, like small time, things that had happened. And I really wouldn't consider them militias. But now they're calling these organizations militias, and now they're demonizing it.
Right.
So people don't even know what it is. And now when you and I have a conversation about it, they're going to have something in their head that the media has already told them is something that's bad.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what I'm telling anyone who's listening to Dan and us right now, the militia is the most important thing. What Dan is describing, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts, is something so special and so beautiful. And don't be afraid to go talk to your neighbors, man. It was a playoff game a couple weeks ago, and I never talked to a neighbor of mine 2 doors down. Recently, I've lived where I've lived for 4 years. And just this past year in the summertime, he'd just start walking with me. I'm walking my daughters, and he'd be like, "Hey, can I tag along?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, dude, that's awesome, dude. Walk with me." And then a couple weeks ago, I went over to his house during halftime. Just knocked on his door. "What's up, man? Come on in." Got to know him. Then he walked me back to my house, and he's like, "Dude," he's like, "I got your back." He's like, "Anyone's in this neighborhood that isn't supposed to be here, I'm ready." I'm like, all right, man. And what brought me to that conversation when we were on our way back was the fact that I met you, Dan. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's powerful, man. For me to understand that, I appreciate it, man. And it was always there for me to see, and I never saw it until I met you. So thank you very much, man.
Well, you're welcome. I thank you for telling me about that. It makes me feel really good, because it really is. That's what America is all about. It's all of us together. That's why they have to keep figuring out ways to divide us and make us think that our neighbors are our enemies. And even this idea that the militia is some kind of bad word. They want to tell us that things like the National Guard is the militia, and it's not. Right? We don't have a militia like we're supposed to have, like is required by the Constitution. We don't have that. The National Guard is the Army Reserves. Right? Those guys are enlisted in the military. They're not the militia. The militia is an independent organization. The militia is there to be trained and prepared to be called to duty when needed. Right? And the government absolutely fears that, because that's an organized group of people who are in constant communication and prepared to act at any time. Right? So the hurricane happens down there in New Orleans.
Yep.
Right? You don't got to rely on FEMA. You've got militias from around the United States who are already prepared. They're prepared for a disaster to happen in their area. So they've already got all the stuff, right? So they take a fraction of their stuff and they go down there and they're able to take care of what's happening in New Orleans. Much better than what the government did. Right? You saw the, I can't remember which hurricane it was, but what was it? The Cajun Navy. Did you see that this was before the government got down? It was one of the recent hurricanes that happened in Louisiana or Mississippi, somewhere around there. And all these guys got in their John boats and their swamp boats and were going around just taking care of everybody.
That was in Texas.
Was that in Texas?
Yeah,
okay.
Yep. I remember watching videos of that, man. You saw random trucks going in and people, yeah. Texas, yeah, man. They're
Go ahead.
No, man, that's beautiful, man. And the first time that we had talked about this subject, that's how it resonated with me, man. It was just how insane it was that I had lived for 30 years and never really understood what a militia was. I knew the word, I'd heard it a few times, but to truly understand what that means and how you just described it is truly something peaceful and something that a lot of people don't know, and something you're never taught fully in its entirety at all growing up in the education system. And I think that is something that's extremely frustrating growing up and not learning about those types of things, just seeing it as words. And at that point, you're leaving it up to, I'm in 6th, 7th grade to try and understand what a militia is. When they should have probably been teaching me in kindergarten. Instead of teaching me that the earth is round and colors and stuff like that, boom, let's get right into it, man. What's up with the Constitution? Why are we free? Teach me that when I'm 5. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Then it resonates. And it's just important stuff, man. All this stuff is important. And just the militia part is just even more important. The fact that, like you said, a disaster happens. You don't even need FEMA. Boom, just people out. Sorry, I can't work today. I'm going down helping with the tornado that happened in Joplin. I'm out. I got to go. Right.
We've already got a plan in place. And it doesn't even have to be, it could be everybody in your neighborhood.
Right.
Your whole neighborhood decides they're going to go. Or it could just be a few of you out of the neighborhood. And what ends up happening, your family gets taken care of. The stuff that you would normally do, everybody in the neighborhood just is like, okay, Paul's got to go because, he's got medical expertise and they really need him down there. Okay, so these are the things that have to happen, right? His wife's going to be there with these young kids. Somebody's going to have to help her out with that, blah, blah, whatever, right? So we're able to all act based on the ground information and knowing what resources we already have. We don't have to send off a bunch of information to the federal government, and they don't have to come in and devise a plan based on what's going on. We already know. We're on the ground.
So I again, all this is very important information. I'm going to tie in, man. We've hit up the Constitution. It's very important. We're getting close to the end of the hour, so I just want to hit up a little bit of just something different. But I'm going to segue into that. I had a friend, I can't remember which friend, but it's a separate friend, not the friend I was talking about earlier. And they were just saying that, man, I remember which friend it was now, my buddy Sean. And he was just saying, man, the way it is right now is perfect. He's like, we don't need any more technology. We don't need to progress. We don't need to become AI. We don't, we can go to the moon. That's fine. You can go to other planets. That's fine. But the way we are right now in America, and I mean, minus making better technology for fuel and stuff like that and cleaner air. But like you said, you talked about the emissions and how important it is to get the greenhouse gases and stuff like that. That's all up for debate. But right now we're fine. We're breathing air. But everything is fine right now the way it is. Technology is good the way it is. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to take away that human connection like I talked about earlier, to where you and I don't have that interaction. Like you said, Dan, your neighbor is not your friend. They're not your enemy, but they're kind of weirded out by him a little bit. Man, I'm scared to go outside. I don't want to get too close to him. I don't want to breathe in their face. I was out shopping today, man. I looked my neighbor. Swear to you, my neighbor. She's older. She's, maybe 65. I looked at her twice, dead in the face. She didn't even say a word to me. Mm-hmm. Didn't say a word to me. At one point I had my mask off. I'm like, and I was just waiting, and I was within a foot from her, 2 or 3 separate times. She didn't say a word.
Right.
I'm like, that is their agenda. That is their plan. That to me is crazy, man. That to me is crazy. And sorry, I just had to say that. But do you agree or not agree that we don't really need even further technology anymore? Do you think we've hit a pinnacle?
I think that we have a lot. I don't think we need a whole lot more technology, but I think that one of the things that scares the hell out of these other authoritarians around the world is the potential that America has to blow the doors off of everything. Because the people that we have here, one of the ways that these authoritarians have been able to keep everybody under control for so long is that they have been able to to create scarcity repeatedly. And when scarcity happens, people get afraid. And when people get afraid, what do? They run to somebody they think is going to be able to solve the problem. We saw it in the Great Depression, right? And one of the things that happened, the Industrial Revolution started and all this technology started taking off. One of the things that happened was America started getting all of these geniuses. All these people were like, screw this, I'm not going to live in this country that I grew up in because they won't let me do what I want to do. I'm going to go to America. Minus
the scientists we took from Germany.
Well, I'm talking about before that, but yeah,
okay.
You're exactly right. Yeah. But, we had all these people like Nikola Tesla who came here. And why did he come here? Because he could have the freedom to do what it is that he wanted to do. He wasn't beholden to someone else, because every idea and invention that you come up with in England or Germany or China or Russia is owned by the government. They own it. They own their people.
What was it in the 1980s where that guy invented a car that ran on water and then he just magically died in a business meeting out at like a restaurant or a coffee shop?
Right. And there was a guy in the 60s who invented a carburetor that would allow a V8 engine to get 80 miles to the gallon.
He's dead.
No, he's not dead. From what I understand, well, he may be dead now, but he didn't get killed. But Ford supposedly bought that patent from him and signed him to a silence contract. Bought the patent for that and stowed it away.
Yeah, it's either that or you die.
Mm-hmm.
Pick whichever one you want to do.
Right, and Americans just keep coming up with that stuff because freedom allows you to be able to do those kind of things. And so, like licensing for servers and stuff, they keep figuring out ways to make it so that you sit there and you have to go, gosh, what do I got to ask? I got to ask permission before I can go do that. You can't even, kids can't even set up lemonade stands now, right? And that's the world that they want to fit us into, where everything that you do, you have to have permission for. And they got to do that because otherwise, not only will America blow the doors off of everybody, because remember, we're 5% of the population and 30% of the world economy already. Even with all the beatdown they've been putting on us for 100 years, we're still 30% of the world economy. Right? So we'll blow the doors off of everybody, and America will end up taking over the world. And I don't mean like going and conquering all these places, but I mean the word gets out and people are like, I like what they're doing in America. That's what I want to do. And the next thing you know, the government of China is looking at not just Hong Kong rebelling, but all these other cities start rebelling. Right? Because the people in Hong Kong already had a little bit of a taste of freedom, and they started putting that together with not England. England is who they used to be attached to. They're walking around with American flags in Hong Kong now.
Yep.
American flags.
Yep. And Trump flags too.
English flags. Because we are the free world. America is the free world. There is no free world without America. We are the sole occupant of the free world.
I think
every other government on the face of the planet is an authoritarian government that provides privileges under certain circumstances to certain people who live there. They have no rights.
And the thing is, man, it's had to have taken hundreds of years for all these countries to get to that point of psychopaths running that type of that type of country. And for it to overwhelmingly, majoritarily, over 90%, or even if it's 99%, take over the whole world, and we're that 1%, or we're the 10%, whichever it may be, that are free, that's insane. Like that's how many psychopaths are in control of all these countries to where they don't allow freedom. And we've been this free country since 1776. And I don't know what would be the next country that's closest to it. You know what I'm saying? And how much progression's been made to make those countries free. And if so, is it just a false sense of freedom in those countries? And are those same psychopaths still running it? Like that's some deep shit, man. That's some deep shit. If we're truly the last standing free country that is on this planet, that is nuts. We are in the most.
We're not the last. We're the first. There was never one before us.
So
there has never been one until America showed up. We're the first. We created the free world. Without America, there is no free world and never would have existed.
Right. And look at what it has created. This is what it's created. Us being free, this is what it's created with this amount of technology where everyone has eyes to see. Everyone can see it now, and everyone wants a piece of the pie, and they are shutting it down, man. They are shutting it down faster than we could even have a podcast for an hour. You know what I'm saying? They're shutting it down that quick, and it's happening that fast. And that's what's scary to me.
Well, it's freedom is a hard thing. It's like trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right?
Yeah.
Once you squirt it out, it's really hard to get it back in the tube.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the situation that we're in, is that there's enough people here who have tasted freedom and know what it's all about, that it's going to be extremely difficult. They've been having to push this slowly. The slow boiling frog.
That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing, and they're waiting for people like you and I to die off. Once my generation dies off, they have the long game, Dan. They have the long game, and once my generation dies off, you know how easy it's going to be for them. It's going to be real easy, man.
That was the thing, is that they keep doing that. Freedom is such a powerful virus. It is so contagious that they. Remember, I was telling you about immigration being a tool that they've used to undermine our country. Freedom is such a powerful, is so contagious that people who came over here from these authoritarian countries in Europe, when they came over here, their children got on board with the Constitution. Not fully, but enough to where they realized they couldn't bring in any more people from Europe. That wasn't going to solve their problem, because the Constitution is the authoritarians' problem. They need to destroy it, and they've been working hard to do that. But freedom is such a contagious idea that these people who were used to living under kings and dictators and having everything in their life told to them came over, and their kids were like, hey, man, this freedom is pretty cool. I'm on board with it. So they said, well, we'll have to start bringing in people from India and China and from, Central and South America, because those people not only have no idea what freedom is all about, they've always dealt with it with an authoritarian government. But on top of that, every one of those countries has a full understanding of what a second-class citizen is, right? They are already bred and completely in line with a 1%. The others, right? They are fully in line with that, and they're fine with it. They just are, and that's the difference between America and Americans and other people around the world. You and I, because of what we did with the Constitution, because of what the forefathers wrote in the Constitution, we've set up a situation where people in this country are on the same footing, on the same level, and have the same powers as kings and dictators in other countries.
Yep.
You go to another country, you can't carry a gun, right?
You can't be king. You can't be queen.
You can't own property,
right?
We can talk about the ways that those freedoms have been encroached on, but that was something that we did with the Constitution. We set up a government that was limited and could not infringe on those things. And we sat back and we just kind of got a little bit lazy. But all we got to do is just stand up and shake it off and say, okay, this is stopping.
Right.
So I own whatever gun I want to own. I carry it around with me wherever I want to go. If I decide to go into business and the business owner says, you can't have your gun in here, and I go, okay, well, I'm not shopping here. Or Well, okay, do you got a place where I can put it down? Because I like doing business with you,
Right.
Got some place where you can keep it? And I was like, well, no, well, okay, well, until you have some place where I can keep my gun while I'm shopping, I'm not shopping here.
Right.
I think you should rethink your policy because it would be a good idea for someone like me to be in here because you want to pay for a security guard. If you've got armed people who are willing to do business with you inside your business, how often do you think you're going to get robbed?
If we were to do like tomorrow, just switch it and go try and figure out what our problems are and fully implement the Constitution, it would take a little bit of time, right? To get everyone to get rid of the amount of propaganda and brainwashing that's been going on for the past 100 years or even longer. It would take a while. It really would. But the after effects in years to come would be a very magical place, man. And I know nothing's ever perfect. I know it's not a utopia, and that's not what I'm suggesting here in this podcast is a utopia. But what I do strive for and what I do suggest is that everyone live free and everyone live and do what it is that they want to do unhampered by others as long as those other people don't hamper them. And that is my goal, honestly, on Talk Junkies, man, is just to spread knowledge to people to where we can all be free and do what we want to do, man. But we're getting close to the end of the hour. Or yeah, we're a little bit over, Dan. I really appreciate you coming on, man. You got any lasting words, my man?
You got to be careful with that because I'll get going, man.
Yeah, I know.
Because one of the things that you just said really resonated with me about the time frame for implementing this. Because here's one of the dangers that the authoritarians face with everything that they've done. People are so indoctrinated with the idea that they need to follow the law and obey what the government says or obey what the law says, that if we got to the point where it became clear that the Constitution was the law and we started to implement those things, it would be a pretty quick process to bring everybody on board if it's done correctly, right? Look at all the compliance that we had with these mask laws, these mask mandates.
Yep, you're right.
Got on board with that, right? If we suddenly had somebody who stood up, was recognized as an authority, like maybe even Donald Trump got up and said, by the way, we need to implement the militia, and so all of you people, you need to get some guns, you need to meet your neighbors, you need to start figuring out what you're going to do if there's a flood around and you need to make some way to have water, right? Just set out a few things like that. How many people do you think are gonna balk at that? They may balk on week 1, but week 2 comes around and they start seeing other people in the neighborhood doing things, they will fall in line.
Yep. It's true, man. It's true. You're not wrong.
So, but yeah, I tell you, I think I really do. I don't know why, but I really have become a whole lot more hopeful. In spite of everything that's going on, there's just something that's happening that makes me feel like things are really starting to move in a positive direction.
Well, I'm all for that, man. And let's all hope for that because that's what we all need right now is something positive. And we just need to continue, man. Life is a very long process. And people say it's short, and I know that you might say that too. Like, man, you're in your 30s, like it goes by fast. But you know what, man? Like for me, I don't look at it like that, man. I don't and maybe when I get older, I'll say that to people like it goes by quick, But like for me, it's just I'm living day to day, man, and I'm trying to enjoy every moment of every day that I can, because life has struggles, and sometimes you mentally can get on a roller coaster, and that's just part of being human. But when those times are good, man, I'm trying to enjoy every moment of every day, of every minute of this life that I'm living, and I'm just gonna keep pushing that on the podcast, man.
Yeah, because there's a whole lot more good than there is bad.
Yep.
I've noticed that a lot of times when things are bad, it's a lot of it has to do with my attitude and perspective on what's going on, even when things are difficult. Even when I'm looking at the checking account and I'm going, there's not enough money to pay the bills, right? There's still something that I can look at and go, you know what? There's a positive way to look at this. I'm still healthy. I'm still physically fit. I can go out there and find some way to make the money that I need.
Yep.
I'm not behind the eight ball on that. So,
right. It's America still, baby, in that aspect too. You can still make that money.
Yep.
Dan,
yep.
It's been a pleasure having you on, man. It's been a little bit too long, but we're still in contact, man. We still text occasionally, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the relationship that we have, and I'm glad I met you, man. And I always appreciate when you come on the show, man. It's been a blessing.
Yes, I would second that. I'm really glad that I met you guys too. All of you, you especially, but all you guys. So.
Well, I'll get you on here, man, with Johnny and Jesse again. Johnny's doing something a little bit different that's taking up a little bit more of his time. So it's going to be a lot of me and Jesse. So I'm going to hit you up, man. We'll stay in touch.
All right.
Are you
Sounds
still?
good.
Can people still find you on Facebook, or are you kicked off for good?
No, I just got a 30-day ban. I got off a 30-day ban. And I posted something and was on there for less than 24 hours, and I got another 30-day ban.
All right,
but my Constitution page is still there.
Okay,
there's still good content on there, and Messenger still works. So if you message me through the Constitution page, I can answer those through Messenger.
Johnny has a link to that, so shoot me the link if you can, just via text, and I'll put that in the description below, because you guys can find Dan on Facebook. He has a Constitution page on there, where there's a lot of great information like he just said. I'll put that down in the description.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining, man. Have a good night, and I hope you guys all enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and just let us know what you think in the comments below of this conversation. Dan is always on the comment thread, commenting on our videos, so if he's going to check out our comments on this video, and if he sees something on there, he's going to reply to you. He may or may not, I don't know. But just let us know what you think, man. This is the most important thing that could probably be happening right now. So cheers, man.
Cheers. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you later. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dan is always it's just always a blessing to have him on. But like I said, the best thing you can do is smash that like button with your pinky finger. Before you do that, bite your nail, and then with the mouse, you click it with your pinky finger. You hit the like button with your pinky finger. And then after that, you use your forehead, and click the subscribe button. And let us know what you think of these videos. Stay fly and ring the bell.